I really do try to not overreact to any playoff game, especially a game one, because especially when you're dealing with the Eric Spoelstras of the world, just the absolute premier coaches in the league, so much can change from game to game, but especially that initial feel out game one where you're on the road, the other team's crowd rather, is super hype, and the team just gets off to a blazing start. That can be really difficult to navigate, of course. But if anything, I think this was more representative of what Miami's going to look like at their best and not what Cleveland is. Because if you watch the game or just perused the stats, you'll see Donovan Mitchell led all scorers with 30 points on an incredible 68% true shooting. He had a solid assist to turnover ratio with 4 assists to 2 turnovers. So it seems like just a total dominant Mitchell game. And this year he only averaged about like 24, I want to say. So it's pretty different from what his average is. Yeah, it's 24. So that compiled with the fact he was 10 percentage points higher than his average true shooting percentage. That's really significant, of course. But Miami got way more production, 1 through 4, honestly, in their pecking order than Cleveland did. Because Mitchell has this great game that's, above even his good standard. But Hero, he was about what you would expect. He scored 21 points on 53% true shooting. That's only 3 points less than he normally does. It's 8 percentage points lower than his normal true shooting, so that is significant. But production wise, that's about what you can expect from Hero. Mobley, though, as we get into the number two options, Mobley was not really productive at all on the offensive side. He's still such a good defender. He is very similar to Bam in the sense that, they could score 0 points and still be doing things to help your team win. Mobley kind of put that to the test a little bit. He only had 9 on 45% true shooting, which is abysmal, especially for a big. So Mobley was not an effective scorer by any stretch. And then Adebayo, conversely, scored above and beyond what he normally does with 24. Again, a little bit less efficient than he normally is, 49% true shooting on the game versus his typical 56. That's kind of within the realm, though, of possibilities with Bam, because that 56 in and of itself is rather low, especially again for a big that does his work mainly in the paint. So Bam is, susceptible to having these lower efficiency nights, and I don't, drastically concern myself with that because he is an absolute premier defender and he can be an offensive hub in other ways. So that's not to belittle him as a player. It's just, something you account for a little bit with Bam and to an extent Mobley, but not to that extent. So, so far Hero gives you about what you expect. Bam gives you probably a little bit more than you expect. For the number threes, I would say Garland did significantly, an absolute ton more than Wiggins did, as Garland had 27 points on 76% true shooting. He averages 60% true shooting. That is ridiculous. He was a great playmaker as well with 5 assists to 2 turnovers. So Garland just went off. He had himself a game. I love that for him. I've been pretty high on Garland from his college days, and he just is a very fascinating player to me. I think overall I've expected a little more from him than he's turned out to this point, but he still is a very solid player, very competent offensive hub, and struggles on defense, but lots of point guards do, especially at that size. So I'm not, again, too preoccupied with that. Wiggins, on the other hand, pretty blah. He had 14 on 59% true shooting. So he was a little bit lower than he normally is. But again, it's not like he's Mobley scoring 10 points less than he normally will. And the really significant player matchup, even though they don't match up with each other defensively or anything, but for the fourth option on the team, DeAndre Hunter and Davion Mitchell, this was the Davion Mitchell game. This is, it's a little insulting to say because it's not a ridiculous output still, but this is like absolute peak what you can expect from Davion Mitchell on offense. Hunter went 0 for 4. So in total, the Cavs got 66 points from their top 4 points per game guys. That is an average of 16.5 points. I did that off the dome, so it's probably wrong in all actuality, but something like that. That's really low. The lowest they averaged for anyone in the top 4 was Hunter with 17 a game. So for your average to be lower than your fourth guy's average, and you're including, Mitchell with 30 and Garland with 27, that shows how rough Cleveland was from basically everybody. And Mitchell, on the other hand, just was so productive, still such a great defender for point guards and small shooting guards. I would love it if he was just a little bit bigger to have a little more versatility. But regardless, he is a pest on defense, and offensively, he had himself a night. Only 18 points, which for him is about the max you could expect. But he had 75% true shooting and 9 assists to 3 turnovers. That's incredible stuff for Mitchell. You get him, and his money is made from his defense. So anything he does on offense that resembles a game like that is just pure gravy. It's the cherry on top. It's kind of a disgusting, analogy, but with gravy and the cherry on top, not either of them respectively, but in conjunction with each other. So yeah, this is a game that Miami kind of got the type of game they want. Obviously you'd like to see Mitchell and Garland be a little bit lower in production and efficiency as well. But it's just really hard to keep this Cleveland team down on offense. When you have 4 guys that can really score like that, and then you have Jared Allen, who is just one of the most efficient players in the league year in and year out, it's tough. And then you have, supporting players beyond that too with like Strus, and that just overall makes, things very, very difficult. I don't think Miami's going to have another game like this where they just completely bottle up Hunter and Mobley like that. Maybe they do, but other people step up more than other people stepped up for Cleveland in this game. So this really does have me worried for Miami. I think this is looking like a sweep, and I know I said I don't like to overreact to one game, but this was like their best shot at getting a game. When you have the other team's top 4, scoring at such a putrid level, that's when you got to capitalize and steal a game. Even if they stole this game, even if they really stole game 2 as well, I would still be backing Cleveland. I think there's just that big of a talent discrepancy. But, at least looks more respectable for, Miami if they get a game here or there. And respect is something that Miami really concerns themselves with. They are, to use an NFL analogy, they're kind of the Pittsburgh Steelers of the NBA world, where they just never want to be bad. And, Miami has had more success recently than the Steelers have, but it's similar teams in the ideology of, just always sort of being in the mix. And this is a year where it looks like that might not happen, even though they're in, their typical 8th seed form from the play-in, and they're a tough team that's really, really well coached again from Spoelstra and his great staff. But this just doesn't look good for Miami. And credit to Cleveland. They're a team that I think I've particularly been a little bit low on. I've seen them, throughout the year, of course, just shattering expectations. But my concern was always, well, what are they going to do in the playoffs? Mitchell is the only guy that I feel really safe in to get me 30 in a playoff setting, and he's not getting 30 in the regular season. So what's it look like in the playoffs? If this is what Mitchell's going to look like, anything like this, getting 30 on super high efficiency, obviously he's not going to get 68% true shooting every game. But if he can get you something like 30 on, respectable efficiency, this Cavs team is going to be so incredibly hard to beat. Those are my thoughts on the Cavs and Miami series through game 1. Be sure to let out yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content.